Hi everyone, this is Suzanne Peters with eXp Realty, and you are on Suzanne's Property Playbook. And today we are actually interviewing Brian Stevens. He is a lender here in California, and we're going to talk about lender-realtor relationships from his perspective. So thank you, Brian, for joining us today.
You betcha.
Awesome. So let's dig right in. So I'm a realtor, you're a lender. So
Right.
I want to know, what constitutes a good realtor?
Well, I appreciate the question, and thank you. Here's kind of how it goes for me. Is if you're a lender and you want to have a recession-proof business, you need to work with recession-proof real estate agents. This is really eye-opening for me to understand. A recession-proof real estate agent is somebody who does business in bad times. And right now, it's the cream rises to the top, and we can find out exactly who those people are right now. That's huge. So what distinguishes a good realtor from a bad realtor from a lender's perspective? And this is what every lender, by the way, every lender who's watching this is going to agree. When you talk with a real estate agent and they never pick up their phone, they're always busy, they're always running into an appointment. When adversity shows up on a file, they exacerbate the problem. They don't work to rectify the problem. They increase the stress level for everybody. They don't reduce it. When you work with a good realtor, somebody who has listings, somebody who closes deals, frankly, like yourself, there are people who pick up their phone, respond to text messages. There are people who always have time. They always find time. They're never running into a meeting. And if they are, and if they don't pick up their phone, they absolutely always call back, and generally in a very short period of time. And when you find yourself in a transaction that maybe isn't going as well as it could be, they lower the volume in the situation and calm everybody and work to fix problems rather than exacerbate them. And from a realtor's perspective, this is what you guys want too. When you get the agents who do the one-off deals every 9 months, 12 months, they get this little delicate, bird in their hand, and they're so concerned about that one bird that sometimes they lose perspective of it. And then we go ahead and turn the volume up, and situations become more difficult. And frankly, if you look at the Missouri lawsuit that was filed against the real estate agents a couple of years ago, based on what their compensation was, I'll tell you this right now, that lawsuit had absolutely no bearing. It was shot down in Illinois 2 years before. It was dropped by the Department of Justice, only by the Biden administration, to be picked back up. And when they found the realtors guilty of price fixing, which is an absolute atrocity because your commissions have gone up and down, they vacillate up and down, and they've done that forever. You can go ahead and list at 1%, 6%, 10%, whatever you want to list. It was a travesty that lawsuit went through. But what I really think it spoke to was not the fact that real estate agents are making about 5.1% on average on their commissions right now. I think what it spoke to is that the populace at large doesn't have a lot of faith in real estate agents, and it's not because of the good agents. The good agents, they have clients who want to work with them and are very comfortable paying what that commission is. I think it really speaks to the multitude of agents who close those one deals per year, who don't do this full-time or professionally, who meet the description of what I just spoke about. And not only are lenders looking for real estate agents who are problem solvers and really working in unison and partnership, but I think from a realtor's perspective, a lot of these agents who have been weeded out over the past couple of years, they're the ones giving the good realtors a bad reputation. You can close a deal in California, and they can have a friend in Missouri who's listing a house, and they could have had a horrible experience with a part-time hack real estate agent, and they're having a conversation with one of their friends in Missouri. Now that friend in Missouri is tainted against real estate agents too. It's the old adage, if you do a great job, they tell nobody. If you do a bad job, they tell everybody. So I think this market is really, really good for weeding out a lot of the weaker agents, and I think that will elevate the reputation of all real estate agents. But from a lender's perspective, and where the animosity comes in, it's because of those type of antics. And because I think there's really about 95.5, about 5 to 10% of the realtors do a really great professional job, that leaves the vast majority of agents out there who kind of meet a lot of the description of what I'm talking about. And I'm not trying to be mean about this. I'm not knocking real estate agents. In fact, what I'm doing is advocating for the good real estate agents out there too, because reputationally, we are a collective hive. And when somebody does a bad job, it hurts reputationally those of lenders and real estate agents alike.
Absolutely. You touched on a lot of things in that one response. Now, what I want to do is kind of shift a little bit, but along the same lines. So I'm an agent who I would love it if every transaction was with one single lender. But a lot of times my clients show up already pre-approved, already with an established relationship. So when you have agents that are coming to you because of maybe that pre-established relationship with the client, what qualifying questions do you want a realtor to ask you before the offer is written, before, they really start diving in on looking at a property? Like what are those things that just kind of let you know that that client is in safe hands with that realtor?
A lot of that one comes down to, I think it's trust. I think it's going through the process of a transaction and seeing how people behave in both the good times and the hard times, particularly the hard times. Everybody deals right now, and I hear from lenders, every deal seems to have a lot of hair on it. When you have a market like ours that is retracting, every file individually comes under more scrutiny than it has before. In other words, if we look at the past couple of years, you're going to see reports that say mortgage fraud is going up, mortgage fraud is going up. Well, is it really going up, or are we just looking and auditing these files a little bit more closely? So underwriters right now and lenders, they know that their files are going to be scrutinized by their funding sources, and they don't want to have any buybacks. So they tighten their underwriting guidelines. So deals today are harder to close in general than they were a few years ago. When money is flowing free, underwriting guidelines, they tend to lax a little bit. When things tighten up, underwriting guidelines tighten up, and they scrutinize files more and more. So I think from a realtor's perspective, it's really having a great understanding of that property, any issues that are on the property, particularly from a listing standpoint. Try to find out if there's anything that might be hidden. That could certainly be it. And from a realtor's perspective, from a lender's perspective, I think that markets like these, they require a little patience. Writing 15-day offers. Be very, very clear with your lender in terms of where you're at with that file. And if a lender says, I don't think we could do it in 15 days, there's probably a reason. I think it's very fair for a realtor to ask, why is that? And a lender should be completely transparent and say, well, I'm working on X, Y, and Z. But giving these transactions a little bit more leeway and a little bit more, a wider berth in order to close is probably a good idea, as more files today have hair on them than they did in years past. The other thing I think I would like to see from realtors, and frankly, this is where lenders are falling down. I don't think a lender or realtor should be out there necessarily talking loans with the clients, but I do think it's very important for realtors to be armed with enough information, particularly with like non-QM loans, to understand that certain types of loans are available for gig workers, for self-employed workers, for independent shop owners, things like that. Understand the bank statement loans, understanding DSCR loans, understanding that if somebody doesn't have a job, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't qualify. They might be sitting on $500,000, and we can go ahead and do something called an asset depletion loan where we can extrapolate an income from that. Arming real estate agents with the base knowledge of the different types of products we have, so when they find themselves in conversation, their wheels can start to turn and say, okay, there could possibly be a deal in here, and I want to get this over to my lender. So I think a curiosity about what lenders are doing, arming yourself with like a little bit of an understanding of what the products are, but also understanding that, at the end of the day, the lender is going to be able to do that, and giving a little bit of grace, I think is probably where we need to be.
We've talked a lot about what you look for in a good realtor and, problem solving, solution oriented, not making mountains out of molehills. We've also talked about, you just mentioned, knowing products, but not being the lender. For most real estate agents and lenders, the number one struggle is lead generation.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does a realtor partner with a lender to become their main referral source? Like, is that something that you as a lender talk to your lenders about, like finding that go-to agent? Is it something where it just really doesn't happen because you don't want to play favorites with realtors? What does that look like from your perspective?
I have a unique approach to my business. There's no expectation of meeting face-to-face anymore, which was kind of surprising to me getting back in loans, which means I can, wherever I'm licensed, I can go ahead and work and I can do the same job for somebody who lives 1 mile away from me or 100 miles away from me. We utilize Zoom and things like this. More so, after COVID, this was an inevitability, but the COVID sped everything up. People are comfortable speaking on Zooms and Teams and things of this nature, and we can really kind of accomplish the same type of thing. So I work with one agent per market. And the reason for that is because if I'm going to give all my attention to that agent, I want to be able to do that. And I don't want to have to pick favorites. Now, I will tell you this, though. There's a gal named Sheila Oaks. This was about 25 years ago, dating myself. And Sheila Oaks, I saw her 25 years later. She looked 70 then, she looks 70 now. And Sheila Oaks, this sweet little lady, I swear to God, this old gal, she put everybody into contract. Everybody. It was amazing. I would have realtors I would work with. This was when it was more geographically located in one area where you went. And I would have realtors who would show properties this was back in 2008, 9. They'd show properties for 3-4 months. Oh, we can't find anything. You give that client to Sheila Oaks, she'd have them in contract the next day. I swear to God, it was the funniest thing in the world. So from a lender's perspective, yeah, we like to see if I have leads to hand off, I want to know that client's going to be taken care of. And at the end of the day, yes, we have our legal and moral obligation, our fiduciary to our clients, and we want to do our best job. Yes, and of course, one of the ways of doing that is compelling people to make good decisions. And, from us, of course, we want to do the greatest job we can for our clients, but this is also a business and our livelihood. If we don't get our clients into contract, well, then we're spinning our wheels. So a realtor who has a high conversion rate is going to appeal a heck of a lot more to me than somebody who's going to have a client languish looking at properties for 6 months. I'm going to actually add to this. I want to get in the weeds. There was an experiment that was conducted a number of years ago, and they took a computer simulator and they took like 3 or 5 real estate agents, and then they grabbed a handful of clients and they had them input exactly what they were looking for in a house. And then the computer model came up and said, these are houses that you should look at. And then the realtor said, these are the houses that you should look at. In every case, the computer beat out the real estate agent in terms of the property that the client liked. Now, why is that? Because a realtor, and this is human nature, brings their biases to the table. So I might tell you certain things I like in certain neighborhoods I want, and you might say, well, this is a better neighborhood, so let me show you these. And so we're not necessarily following exactly what our clients are hearing. So I think really listening to our clients and what they're looking for goes a big way into conversion. And again, I know that your conversion rate is extremely high, and what that tells me is that you're actively participating in listening and communicating with your clients and what their needs are. So a high conversion rate is a huge factor, I think, from a lender's perspective.
They always say, I'm from the outside looking in. And so sometimes we have different perspectives, sometimes
Sure.
better perspectives than people that are in the situation themselves. What do you see realtors doing right now? Ones that are not successful, like maybe they're like, hey, I really want to grow my business even in this market. What are you seeing from a bird's eye view that maybe they can't see that they could be doing better right now in this market?
I think it's really educating your clients. I think that's a big one. And lenders, listen up here too, because this affects you as well. We have clients who remember the days of the 2s and 3s interest rates. And a lot of people are fence sitting right now, waiting for rates to come back down. I read an article yesterday that said, well, rates are high right now. They're in the 6s. I'm like, are you out of your mind? On a historic average, rates are still lower today than they've been over the past 70 years. That's an unmitigated fact. So letting our clients know you're not going to see the 2s and 3s again. It's not going to come back. As a result of those 2s and 3s, which was the worst thing that ever happened to the housing market, we bid our payments up to as high as we could go. We have a market right now where prices are set with rates at the 2s and 3s. People can't afford to buy the houses because rates aren't in the 2s and 3s. So by extension, they went down faster than any time in history. They've gone up faster than any time in history. There's still a belief that people are going to be able to sell their houses at prices based on a market that represents 2s and 3s. In the 6s and 70s, as the old saying goes, that dog don't hunt. I think one of the things that a realtor can do in educating their client is letting them know that we're not necessarily going to list your house at the top of the market, as over half the major metro areas across the country, over 40 of the major metro areas right now are seeing the properties sit, delistings are at a record high. Broken contracts are at a record high. And the reason for that is there's an unrealistic expectation on what you're going to get for your house. Now, even if we took a 20% haircut in terms of prices, and you look at the overall trajectory of our equity growth on a per house basis, even if we took a 20% haircut, we would still be destroying historic averages. And that would bring affordability back to the table. And that would bring the market back in line with where rates are at today and frankly, where they're going to stay. We might see the 5s, but we'll never see the 2s again. So when somebody goes on a listing presentation, there could be, in order to get that listing at all costs, you might say, okay, well, I'll list your house for more money than my competition will, only to see that house sit, only to see those clients get frustrated, only to further hurt the reputation of all real estate agents. I think sitting down on a listing presentation and being honest about what the price is if they truly want to sell that house, and saying, I'm not going to list at the top of the market because that's not what this market demands if you truly want to sell it. And even doing so at the expense of possibly losing that listing. So I think having a realistic conversation with our clients about the market that we're in, reading the tea leaves of the market, I think is hugely, hugely important. And I don't think that's happening as often as it should. If I were wrong, houses would be selling at a faster clip than they are right now. This isn't all houses. You're going to find your odds and end houses, but when you're talking about your typical 4, 2.5, 3 track home, we have to be realistic about what's moving and what's not.
Well, I really appreciate your time. And just to recap, you gave us some good notes here today from a lender perspective on real estate agents. Number one, never to be too busy to pick up your phone. Sounded like that was a really big thing for you. Making sure that we work on our client lending realtor relationships and just be very open and honest about what's happening, what's transpiring. Your last thing was really just having those hard conversations with where the market's at, whether it's listing the property and listing it at the right price, but also maybe even preparing the offer, knowing that every client right now on the buying side wants to lowball everybody, and just letting them know when maybe a house is priced correctly, because not all of them are at that inflated price that you were talking about. And I will just add in, again, for all the realtors out there, that your relationship with your lenders is so vitally important. Because again, you never know when a lender is going to give you a referral. They might be fewer and far between, but again, if you work on building those relationships, it definitely can be a great lead source for you. So thank you so much for joining. And again, my name is Suzanne Peters, and this was Suzanne's Property Playbook, and that's the play for today.